I promised I would do a tutorial on some of the nails from the DVOK Glacé collection, so let's do the crystal nails first. We'll be using 2 of the mag gels, a couple of the syrup gels from that collection, and then a few extras, a 3D gel, some flake glitter, and 2 alcohol inks. We are starting off with a clear nail, and we are going to use the NailMartUSA ice glitter in white. It's a really nice pearly, transparent flake glitter, and we're going to blend that with the Core 3D Imbo gel. And this is just a pretty stiff texture gel, and I'm just going to pre-mix it on a little dental thing there. And you really don't need a lot of the glitter. In fact, too much will kind of opaque out the base layer too much. You just want some of that flash in there. And that's sort of about the chunk I'm taking out of there, and put the lid back on right away. I've accidentally cured half of several of my thicker texture gels lately, surprisingly quickly. I've added a couple lights recently. I think to my poor gel polish, it's like I'm doing nails on the sun now. There, see that? It's that really nice big flake glitter, and I'm just going to tap in there with my little tiny palette knife thing and just get a good little chunk on there. And then we're going to gently fold it in to our thicker gel because we don't want to break it all up. So just, treat it like we're folding in egg whites. And also don't breathe too hard around that glitter because it'll fly everywhere. And once you have that lightly mixed, then just scoop it up on the palette knife, and then we're going to sloppily apply it to the nail. And this is my little cheat to just help us get some more craggy stone randomness into the nail, which we'll see as we go along, because it's creating these ridges and crevasses, just a texture that everything else is going to get caught up in. Plus, then we'll get that flash underneath everything. And I do like I smear it on, and you can kind of go in different directions. You want to make sure you have some ridges going on. And I will kind of go and then scrape along and clean up my edges just so I'm not having to do everything later. You might as well do some now where you don't want it. And this is what I have. It's a little hard to tell because it's clear, but just so you can see how textured that is. And we want to do a full cure on that for 60 seconds. And that's what it looks like after it's cured. And our next step is to do the mag gels. So we are using 63 and 64 from the Glacé collection. And that is the fine champagne yellow, gold color, and the pink. So I'm going to start out with the champagne. And I'm going to do maybe the bottom half-ish of the nail, maybe 2/3. And you need to kind of stab it in there so that we are getting it into all the little crags and nooks and crannies. And I don't use a huge thick coat of it because we don't want to completely fill in all of those ridges. We want those to still kind of be there for the next layers as well. So if you need to remove some after you've, slathered it on there, do that. Not a big deal. And now it's time to magnetize it, and I'm just speeding this up so you can see the entire process. And there's really not one certain way you need to do it, but we just want some flash in there, and we want that to kind of start defining those clear, craggy lines we have. And so I kind of went in there with my little magnet too to just get some more stuff on the edges. And that's what I have for the champagne. And now we're going in with the pink. And that we're just going to do on the top half and just sort of messily blend it with the bottom. And we've cured the champagne, so we don't have to, we're not worrying about blending them nicely together. And we are just treating the pink exactly like we did the champagne. And so we're magnetizing it, and again, just trying to get some flashiness and define some of those wrinkly ridge sort of characteristics we have going on. And then do a full cure on that. And this is what we should have. We've got a nice blend of pink and champagne sparkles. You can see we have this really nice texture going on that we really didn't have to work all that hard to get, which is lovely. And because this is Korean gel polish, these tend to have a pretty good gooey layer of an inhibition layer on them after you cure them. So before I go in with a file or anything, just so I'm not gunking it up, I like to just clean it with alcohol. And now on this, I'm just going to go in and take the really extreme pointy stuff off because we don't need it to be there. And this again is just sort of my like, let's clean it up a little as we go. I am not totally filing this flat. I still want the ridges. I'm just getting rid of the like stupid high kind of stuff that really doesn't need to be there. Because I still want the colored syrups to do what we were doing with the mag gels. And just so you can quickly see what mine looks like after I've just done a little filing. And then, clean the dust off with some alcohol. And now we are ready to splotch on our tinted syrup gels. I'm going to start with my favorite, number 85, one of the bright peachy pinks. And I'm just going to do a light coat, and I'm not coating the entire nail. I'm blotching it on in areas. So you just want to pick like your main color, and then I'm going to do a little secondary color, and then maybe a slight veiny accent. And you can switch this up however you want, and you don't have to use these exact colors, but this is just sort of what I chose for my fake little pretend fantasy crystal nail. And for my secondary color, I am just going in with the number 87, which is just a more subdued neutral peachy tone. And just sort of, blotching it on in spots. And you just don't want this too thick because we do still want that transparency to come through from the flake glitter and everything. And I feel like this nail is the most successful, the more transparent you keep it through each step, even though that's very difficult to do. Even for me, I still want to just keep putting stuff on there, and I want the mag gels magnetized as much as possible. But we have to remember we still have that flake glitter layer underneath, and if we cover all that up, then we're not going to get that flash. And for my final little tiny accent color, I'm using the 91. It's just a more intense orange. Whether you need this color is very debatable. This is just sort of a little extra. I'm doing it just because I did it on the original nail. I'm really only putting I think 2 tiny thread kind of things on the nail because I just don't want to darken it up that much because we still have to put the inks on it too. So, you can do this, not do it. You can also have some completely different color combo of these and still have a nice fantasy crystal structure kind of nail. Okay, and this is what we should have after we do a full cure. And again, we're going to go in for a second file. And so I'm going to clean that off with rubbing alcohol. And now I am going to go in and just file most of the lumpiness off because I'm just prepping this for the alcohol inks. So there can still be some gentle, rolling divots and things in it. And I go back and forth. I think maybe one time I did do a thin layer of top coat before I did the alcohol inks. This time I just did it straight over the filed nail. I think sometimes when you're doing it straight over the filed nail, you can get a little too opaque of a coat of the alcohol inks. But this time we did that. It ended up fine, but just so you know, it will kind of, it soaks in there more. And when I'm doing this type of filing, I do like to periodically wipe it down with rubbing alcohol again because that re-wets the nail and will show you really what the nail is looking like because I don't want to file too much of everything we just did away. So I just kind of do that to check myself so I don't go crazy with it. And this is what you should have. You can kind of see the clear coming through those striations and weird texture marks. For the alcohol ink, I am using the InkFit frottage set, the cream color and this rosy sort of carmine kind of color. And I'm shaking them up because this set all has white in it. And the white in the inks really likes to settle quickly. Now, I know I've made all my video about making your own alcohol inks. Yes, that's great, but everything is a tool. And now this is the only set of nail inks that I have, but this brand or this set in particular has really great adhesive qualities. So it has some other ingredients besides just what most craft alcohol inks would have. once this dries, you have to use acetone to get it off. Now, this is not true across the board for nail art inks, but for this set, and I'm assuming probably for this brand, this is part of their ingredient list for their nail inks, which is nice. So if you are doing something where you really need something to stick and you might be doing some other manipulation stuff around it, this kind of thing is great. It feels very similar to using the Kokoist liquid chromes and how they have that adhesive in them to make it stick to the nail more. Unfortunately, it's going to be very hard to see the ink work I'm doing with this cream color because it is very similar to what the sanded filed areas look like. So I'm just kind of trying to smear it slightly on its side to do the typical sort of, marbly looking lines you see on crystal stone type nails. You want that sharp edge to the line where then it fades out below it, sort of have a wash. And these pre-made inks, they're just ready to go, which is kind of nice. They're already pretty dilute. And now I'm just going in because I couldn't tell if I had a little too thick, opaque of a layer. It kind of pooled in a few spots. So I'm just going in with a brush with some acetone on it, and you can sort of just rework, the lines a little more to get it how you like. And this is what I have for my first layer of the alcohol inks. And we are not doing a lot. You just need a couple lines going across there. Now, I do want to put a clear coat in between the two ink layers. I'm going to use this Gen B just jelly base coat instead of a top coat just because it's not really the top yet. So, you're just covering that. It's just a good thin base coat. And we do a full cure. And again, because this is a base coat, I am going to wipe it off with some rubbing alcohol. And then we are going to go on to our rose color. And this is the layer that counts. And now we've got a smoother surface to work on, so it will hopefully be a little easier to do. But this is where you have to make those decisions about the lines. And I think I actually end up wiping off this first attempt. Because again, you're having to make it look random and natural, and it's real easy. We just naturally do it as humans to make patterns, and sometimes you just have to wipe it off and start over again. Okay, round 2 of our ink. I would have shown you the train wreck, but it was a very slow evolving train wreck, so I just didn't. Let's just say I ended up putting way too much on, and then I was having to take too much off, and it was that back and forth thing where it's a pit of despair. And so I was like, nope, I'm not going to keep reworking this. So I just wiped it off, and here is our second attempt. And it's the same kind of thing with the cream. You don't need that much line work, and it does not need to be heavy-handed. And it's going to be a matter of you deciding what looks natural and when it's enough and how the lines are intersecting together. And go look at some other videos and see how some patterns are done, if that will help you out. Because this can be kind of one of those freezing situations where you just look at it and stare at it blankly and you don't know where to start at first or where to continue the lines. Like I've said in another tutorial, this kind of line work is harder for me to do than the line work on the labradorite or the moonstone nail, because that line work, there was more of it and it was more scribbly. Like I said before, I'm a scribbler. I'm a scribbly person. There's other people that are more cartoon people where they can do a swirled line and it's a fully formed human nose. I am not one of those people. So when every line counts, I panic a little. And I don't really enjoy it. I mean, it's the same kind of concept as the other stone nails I've done, but it's just like you're doing it with only 4 lines. So that's kind of the thing. And you can still go in. You see, I'm kind of reworking this, splitting things up a little, and I was totally on the verge of doing too much again, so I just kind of made myself stop. And that is it. That is what we are doing for this nail. All we need to do is top coat it now. I am going to use the Yogo Zombie King High Top Coat Non-Wipe Builder Gel, something blah, 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 whatever all the names are called. Extremely versatile gel. I love this stuff. I can't believe how fast I'm using it, actually. A thicker top coat is just great for this nail because it was a textured nail that we've had to file down several times, and you might still have some smooth rolling divots in the nail. My other favorite right now is their other top coat, the more well-known, the zombie top coat that has the green writing on it. That's sort of my other go-to. I'm really liking their top coats. Okay, here is our finished nail. Everything will look much more opaque while you're doing it. And it's each time you get those top coats on there, it really just starts to shine. And then you will start to get little glints of that flake glitter we did as the very first coat. And that really just adds just a huge amount of depth. And if you are able to keep things somewhat transparent in spots, that also, it just gives it so much depth. And having the layers of top gel, clear gel between the ink layers helps. So it's all these little steps that are building upon each other that then gives us the illusion that we are looking at something that is a lot thicker and has a lot more depth than this actually does. And that's kind of what is so fun and challenging about trying to do these types of nails. And so even though sometimes it's kind of daunting, I still like doing them. So there's a little fantasy nail. And, you can mix up the color schemes, whatever you want. So there you go. There's tutorial number 1 from the DVOK Glacé collection.